Hello, this is Unsung with GameLeap, and today we're going to be giving you a list of the top champions that you should one-trick. The best champion for you to one-trick is one that you always enjoy. Finding a main in League requires a mix of a few things. Do you enjoy their aesthetic, their personality, the gameplay? This is what should stand out to you the most. The problem with this is that there are almost 200 champions in League of Legends, and a starting point is hard to pin down simply due to the size of the roster. This is where our video comes in. We're going to help you find some champions to start off with, and then hopefully by the end, you'll give them a try. Our honorable mention here is going to be Kayle. This is due to her massive build variety. If you want to build Kayle as an off-tank, you can do that. If you want to play her as an on-hit carry, you can do that. As a crit ADC, you can do that. Or as a full AP one-shot mage, you can also do that. Due to this, Kayle has really no bad matchups. Even the worst matchups such as Fiora and Irelia, you can cheese out by going press the attack with Ignite, or you can simply dodge their stuff and then stalemate the lane until level 16. This allows Kayle to make even the worst matchups into playable matchups, and then when paired with her build variety, means that she'll never be weak in basically every meta. This champion is really good overall, but she has a kind of awkward playstyle and a lower pick rate because of that. Our solid pick here is going to be Camille. This champion can basically turn every single game on its head. Camille scales immensely well with gold, allowing her to snowball incredibly hard when compared to most of the top laners. Her true damage is good into both squishies and tanks alike. Resistances don't really do much against true damage, and because true damage like Camille's is flat, even a squishy champion will get two-shot. For these reasons, you can also take her into all AD team compositions and not worry about having no AP. This makes her a solid pick in just about every single match. She can be played as a skirmisher, as an engager, as an assassin, basically whatever you require at the time. Camille's strength is largely based around items, but even when certain items aren't going to be as strong, there will always be an outlier. Currently, bruiser builds are really strong. This means that Divine Sunder, Sterix Gauge, Death Stance, and the like are the standouts. Camille can abuse all of these items. If they were not strong, then Camille could default back to Ravenous Hydra, Trinity Force, then Camille could revert back to Ravenous Hydra, Trinity Force, and Guardian Angel. You get the idea. Camille's kit is incredibly skill expressive. This gives her the ability to outplay basically all opponents. Like Kayle, bad matchups aren't necessarily bad matchups. Due to this, Camille has never been bad, will never be bad, and will always be a good pick. Our best champion with time investment for top lane has to be Gangplank. This is without a doubt the hardest top laner in the game. Not a single player has accessed GP's full potential. This is a scaling lane bully that turns all games in his favor with time, much like Camille. He scales incredibly well with gold and levels alike. GP also has the added benefit of having a global ultimate with ridiculous damage. Death's Daughter and Fire at Will allow this champion to impact other sides of the map while not even being there. The only negative about this champion is that the difficulty makes him very inaccessible. It makes it easy to fall into the same playstyle over and over and over again because that's what works. What makes GP so skill expressive is how you can play him. You can play him as a true damage tank melter. You could play him as a pseudo assassin. You could play him as a split pusher. You get the idea. This champion has basically every tool under the sun. While he doesn't necessarily have the greatest of mobility, he shuts down mobility-heavy champions due to how oppressive his area of effect is and how much damage he's able to pump. For this reason, GP is hands down the best champion with time investment. Once you learn the barrels and how you can actually augment different playstyles on this champion, he's without a doubt the strongest top laner in the game. Our best all-around champion to one-trick has to be Aatrox. He's strong due to his constant CC and the ability to play as a ranged champion, like Gangplank. This champion is a bully that can also go for solo kills really early on that scales a decent amount. His mobility on the map is unmatched due to his low ECD. This gives you the opportunity to create very wide and diverse flanks. You can also outplay people during the lane phase with this. This allows Aatrox to be good in the Fiora and Camille matchup, right? Fiora is a lower range champion. She's forced to get into your range, so you can hit her with a barrage of Qs and then outplay the riposte with Aatrox's E and not get hit and then stunned in return. So even his bad matchups aren't quite that bad. You can turn even the worst matchups into a good one through mind games and conditioning. This champion's kit is really simple overall. This also allows him a huge build diversity. If you want to play him as a bruiser, you could do that. If you want to play him as a one-shot assassin, you could also do that. And there's even some crit Aatrox builds floating around. You can build him as a Halo Blades assassin, which is kind of funny when you think about it. Aatrox is also significantly easier to learn than Camille or Gangplank, which definitely brings him to the forefront of our list. If you ever want an in-depth course for any of the champions mentioned, make sure that you head over to GameLeap.com by clicking on the description box below and signing up. I've spent hundreds of hours making perfect courses for these champions. Go ahead and check them out. Now that we covered top lane, let's go ahead and move on to jungle. Our honorable mention here has to be Kayn. This champion has a solution for everything. Red is good for countering bruisers and tanks, whereas blue is good for countering things that want to live. Build him as a bruiser or an assassin with both builds, countering those champions even harder. Bruiser Kayn is really good into squishies, and full AD Red Kayn is incredibly strong into tanks because he simply just two-shots them. This champion has a fast jungle clear which allows you to make your own playstyle. Do you want to invade and set somebody behind, or do you want to farm up and set yourself ahead? It's really up to you. His E is also one of the most skill-expressive abilities in the game, simply due to how much mobility it does provide. For these reasons, Kayn is really good, but I would not recommend him as a super solid pick. For our solid pick, I suggest Evelynn. She has a really bad early game, but it's made up for by her disgusting gold scaling. No other AP champion exerts the sheer amount of pressure on the map that Evelynn does due to her invis. If you're able to make it post level 6, you have full reign of the entire map. Champions also cannot itemize against her because of her W, Void Staff, and her E's max health damage. This means that even the tankiest of foes get two-shot by Evelynn. There is basically no countering this champion. It takes an entire team of coordinated players to shut her down, and thus Evelynn has always been a solid pick and will continue being a solid pick until they strip a full mechanic from her kit, which is very unlikely to ever happen. Our best champion with time investment in the jungle has to be Lee Sin. We all know why this is the best jungler with time investment. His kit allows for endless creativity. Just go ahead and watch a Chinese Lee Sin montage if you don't believe me. Even when Lee is weak, you can absolutely outplay people. His Q and his W are also some of the most skill-expressive abilities in the game with decent range. This means that even the ranged champions that should counter Lee Sin simply don't. Once he's on top of you, it's hard to peel him off. The insect revolutionized modern League of Legends. Before Lee Sin, there wasn't really a champion that had this amount of creativity or flexibility in his kit. For this reason, Riot always buffs Lee Sin before Worlds. So even in his weakest states, he'll always be brought right back up to strong. Just go ahead and look at patch 13.19, the Worlds patch, if you don't believe me. Our best all-around champion to one-trick in the jungle is Nocturne. He has a very simple playstyle that is extremely effective even in the highest levels of play. This champion in Challenger still sees significant levels of play due to how simplistic his kit is and how effective it is on the map. He doesn't really have bad matchups because you can just simply pass to the other side of the map, and Nocturne does very well with both skirmishes in the early game and simply just farming his jungle. For this reason, Nocturne scales well into all stages of the game. Early game, he is one of the strongest duelists. Mid game, he is a really strong assassin, and then late game, he's one of the best initiators in the game because you have to peel him. This is all without taking into account his global ultimate. A global ultimate, or a semi-global like Nocturne's, is one of the best tools that you could ever ask for in solo queue because it punishes bad positioning. If somebody is ever out of position, you can quickly get on them. With Axiom Arc being in the game, you're also able to reset your ultimate very quickly, which means that you can do it again and then punish somebody. Even if Axiom Arc were to be removed, Ultimate Hunter still exists, which allows Nocturne to basically be in all lanes at once, similar to Evelynn. However, Nocturne doesn't have the caveat of having such a terrible early game. Now that we talked about our junglers, let's go ahead and talk about our mids. Our honorable mention here is Orianna. This is a good champion overall, but her kit is starting to show its age. As new champions get released, they have different strengths. A symptom of this is that more modern mages usually have longer effective ranges than Orianna does, but when she's within their range, she's an absolute monster. Shockwave can turn an entire game by itself. This makes her a very good champion that has mostly withstood the test of time. Our solid pick has to be Ahri for this role. She can be played for CC or damage, she's good with both. Everfrost Ahri has seen a lot of play in the last 2 years, and the regular like Rocket Belt into Shadowflame Ahri is also still decent. So is Ludens into Shadowflame Ahri is still good as well. She's able to be played as both an assassin and a CC machine. She has good wave clear and a good ultimate for roaming. This allows her to never really have a bad matchup. Even her worst matchups still have ways for you to outplay them due to how strong Charm is and due to how creative you can be with her ultimate. Ahri, for these reasons, has never been bad and will never be bad. Our best champion with time investment in the mid lane has to be Akshan. He has a weird playstyle, and the decisions that you need to make are kind of awkward due to his passive. Sometimes you want to take the double shot, sometimes you only want to take one for the move speed, you get the idea. This weird playstyle is rewarded with Akshan being one of the hardest scaling champions in the game. While Akshan is an AD champion, he has a significant amount of magic damage in his kit. This allows us to build him as a crit AD carry or as an on-hit AD carry, which is both really strong. Because of Akshan's item reliance, he snowballs like no other with a lead, but he has the traditional weaknesses of being an AD mid. If we want to access the high magic damage, then it requires a lot of gold. And if we want to build him as a crit champion, then he does kind of fall off in the late game. However, this is only in the ultra late game. In mid game and in the early game, he's an absolute monster due to being an AD mid. If you put the time into Akshan and you're able to learn the grappling hook and how to use his passive properly, then he is definitely one of the most skill expressive, if not the most skill expressive mid laner in the game. The best all-around champion here has to be Zed. Zed has more of a reliance on spells, making him more similar to a mage than an assassin. Something like Talon is also very reliant on his spells, but he doesn't have a clone that copies him and extends his effective range. You get the point. Zed is countered by Hourglass, but can easily outplay it. Just because you put a death mark on somebody doesn't mean that you actually need to deal damage to them. You can use death mark to close the gap on somebody else, you could use it to teleport back and then abuse your range capabilities. You get the idea. Bad matchups are all winnable by a playstyle shift on this champion. Some of Zed's worst matchups include Vex and Lissandra. However, if we never dash aggressively into them, we poke them out, and we itemize more of a wave clear style, then we can definitely beat these matchups easily. Zed also has the added benefit of always getting buffed when he is slightly bad. Next on our list is Bottom. Our honorable mention here has to be Vayne. While Vayne is terrible into poke and high harass, the threat of 2-item Vayne will always be significant. You can build her as a split pusher or a duelist. She's good into tanks and into most solo queue meta picks at any given time. You can also build her as a one-shot slot machine, a Trinity Force burst DPS, or a on-hit pure DPS with Rage Blade. This allows Vayne to have a huge amount of diversity in her itemization. She's good into tanks, good into squishies, counters assassins, and she also counters these pesky bruisers that have ruined top lane for like the last 5 years. This champion is overall very solid, and the reason why she's reduced to being an honorable mention is simply due to how weak she is against poke. If Vayne is ever bad bot lane, she'll always be good top lane as well. Our solid pick for bot lane has to be Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa has never been bad, and this is simply due to the fact that her kit is ridiculous. You can build any damage item in the game and have it be good on Kai'Sa. She is built in wave clear to cheat matchups, snowballs insanely hard, has a mixed damage profile similar to Akshan. If you want to build her as an ADC, then you can do that. AP Kai'Sa is also a very strong artillery mage due to how her W works. If we ever land a W, it stacks 4 stacks of plasma, and then we're also able to land another W right after, which then procs our passive and then nukes people for missing health damage. This makes Kai'Sa a very oppressive artillery mage if we want to go down that route. Kai'Sa also has the added benefit of permanently gaining skins. This is modern day Lux. This champion has not gone a single period of a year without receiving a new skin since her release. For this reason, you will always have some new drip to try out. Our best champion with time investment has to be Draven. This is the most oppressive ADC in the game when you have the skill. Draven is the highest ban rate AD carry in skilled play for a reason. He's good with both tanks and enchanters. This gives Draven the capability to stomp any matchup. Draven is also one of the best abusers of meta items out there, simply due to his synergy with both Sheen items and lethality. At any stage of the game, Sheen items or lethality items are always going to be strong, so this means by proxy that Draven will never have a weak period in the game. A single auto attack from Draven with his Q up is equivalent to about 2 to 1.5 auto attacks from a traditional AD carry. This means that basically nobody can trade with you in a 1v1. The hardest matchups for Draven are generally things that outrange him, but if he's ever able to close that distance, then they absolutely just get eaten alive. For these reasons, Draven is hands down the best ADC in the game with time investment. You just have to learn the axes. The best all-around AD carry has to be Ezreal. He's versatile and fun. There's basically infinite builds and rune setups for this champion, like Kayle. However, Ezreal definitely has the highest skill ceiling due to almost all of his spells being skill shots. His E is one of the most creative abilities in the game. The Q is very generic, but its simplistic nature makes it incredibly effective. The W, of course, augments both your E and your Q. And Ezreal's ultimate caused one of the biggest developments to macro play of all time, and that's simply thinning waves on other sides of the map. For these reasons, Ezreal has never been bad, will continue to not be bad ever, and be the best all-around champion bot lane. Now that we covered our bot laners, let's go ahead and talk about supports. Our honorable mention here has to be Zyra. Zyra can easily solo carry games from a screen away. Zyra is always an outlier for applying broken mage items from range. Liandry's is super strong on her. Rylai's has always been a good item for her. Demonic Embrace is also highly effective on Zyra. She makes good use of flat pen. This champion is just really effective with basically every single itemization option. You don't have to int like Brand to be effective on Zyra due to the range extension that plants provide. Plants are also incredibly powerful in the late game, which means that they have to be dealt with. If the enemy team dives on your AD carry or your mid laner, then you effectively act as a second carry, which allows you to take over team fights. Zyra also has the added benefit of being good both in and out of lane due to her consistent CC and her area denial. It's very hard to walk over Zyra's ultimate, and then if you're able to walk around it, then you have to deal with the plants. For these reasons, Zyra is our honorable mention. Our solid pick has to be Blitzcrank. Even in his worst matchups like Morgana, Blitz can easily outplay them by using his ultimate. Having access to a micro silence means that even champions like Ezreal cannot get away from you. You can simply walk up, R them, and then land your Q. Hex Flash also allows him to have potent roams and engages in the lane phase. The point-click CC on Blitz's E simply cannot be outplayed. It will always go through if Blitz gets the auto off. This makes him effective as an engager even without the hook. The threat of hook is also enough to force people to stay away or to play a certain way. There is nothing scarier in League of Legends than a Blitzcrank that knows when to use the hook. You can simply hold a hook after an engage and then go for a backline carry pick. You can use a hook with flash to pick somebody from the other side of the screen. You can hook a tank into your team to have somebody like Set throw them back into the enemy team. You get the idea. This champion is a very solid pick, has always been solid, and can never be bad due to how simplistic his kit is and the strength of his Q. Blitzcrank could be one of the squishiest champions in the game, same, but if his Q remained the same, then he would still be top tier. Our best champion with time investment for the support role has to be Bard. Bard has a good mix of roaming and also staying in lane. You just need to find a balance. This champion is very oppressive. He can build any item in the game, and it's always going to be decent due to the high damage and his basic kit. A point-click slow is effective for a number of reasons. When we have a conal point-click slow, this makes him very scary. Bard's Q and ulti are both hard to master, but they allow you to be incredibly creative. The reason that we have Bard here as a time investment pick is simply due to finding that mix of roaming and staying in lane, and also understanding how your Q and your ulti work. Bard can stop Rift Herald's charge from actually dealing damage to turrets. Bard can contest Baron by himself and ulti off the jungler to allow for smite steals. This champion is just very creative and super neat overall. He also makes some pretty cool noises. Our best all-around champion for bot lane has to be Thresh. This is the first champion to truly modernize League of Legends. Lee Sin is kind of the original playmaker, but Thresh took this to an entire new level. Thresh is the reason why we have champions like Yasuo in League as of now. Thresh's kit is so legendary that it's almost impossible to be bad at. You can max your W if you want to play him as more of an enchanter, you can max your Q to play him as an engager, or you can max your E to play him as a counter-engage or poke-based champion. For these reasons, Thresh has basically infinite builds and no bad matchups. He also has the added benefit of being a ranged champion, so we can abuse enchanter items, engage items, and the like, with basically none of them being a bad option. Riot also loves Thresh, meaning that he always gets attention no matter what. Much like Lee Sin, whenever a world championship comes up or an important tournament comes up, Riot will usually end up shoehorning a few buffs into Thresh. If Thresh is ever at a bad place in the meta, then Riot is usually very quick to address this and buff this champion. For these reasons, Thresh is easily the best overall support champion. Anyways, this was Unsewn with Gamely. Thank you all for watching and I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'll see you all in the next video.